Now, there are some here today who enjoy shopping at thrift stores. Who are those people? Yep, my wife is definitely one. All right, we've got a couple others maybe. And, specifically you think of stores like Goodwill or Miracle Hill, and there are some others out there as well. But, you think about it, some might wonder why so many people enjoy shopping at these stores. When you think about it, these stores are filled with what? With, yes, useful stuff that people wanted to throw away. Used stuff that people wanted to throw away, but instead decided to donate. So when you go to a thrift store, all you see are things that nobody wanted. Now, on a certain level, it doesn't make sense until you understand that things that are not valued by one person are greatly valued, especially at the price they're being sold for, by somebody else. So while someone might not want a 10-year-old golf club or a 5-year-old pair of jeans, they are perfect for the Goodwill shopper. Now, as we look at this passage today, we see one of the things that God highly values. Of course, there are many things that God values. But this passage focuses on one of those things, and it's something that is often not valued in our culture today. That item of value to God we could call a godly woman. A godly woman is not valued by many women or many men in our culture today. Other things are more highly valued than being godly. But to God, whose mind is the one that really matters, whose thoughts are the ones that we should care the most about, to God, a godly woman is extremely valuable. So as we look at this passage today, we'll see what a godly woman is like. And it will become clear why God values godly women so much. The first thing that we're going to see in this passage is that the godly woman works for justice. The godly woman works for justice. Now, that might not be as readily apparent in these verses when we look at them. It might be the godly woman raises her child in wisdom, and that's very true. But as we see the thrust of these verses, we see that it is about making sure that her child is able, the king, is able to work justice. Look with me at Proverbs 31, verses 1 through 9 again. It says, "The words of King Lemuel, an oracle that his mother taught him. What are you doing, my son? What are you doing, son of my womb? What are you doing, son of my vows? Do not give your strength to women, your ways to those who destroy kings. It is not for kings, O Lemuel. It is not for kings to drink wine, or for rulers to take strong drink, lest they drink and forget what has been decreed, and pervert the rights of the afflicted. Give strong drink to the one who is perishing, and wine to those in bitter distress. Let them drink and forget their poverty, and remember their misery no more. Open your mouth for the mute, for the rights of all who are destitute. Open your mouth, judge righteously, defend the rights of the poor and needy." What do we see in these verses here? First of all, the chapter opens up with King Lemuel, whoever that is. Different people who have studied the Bible, a lot more than I have, are not sure who King Lemuel is. Some believe it's King Solomon. Others say, no, it's not King Solomon, it's somebody else. So we're not quite sure who this is. But here we have King Lemuel opening this chapter with the teachings of his mother. This king values the teachings of his mother. Now, we can't, again, be sure who he was, but we can be sure that the ancient Jews recognized that these words were inspired of God. These are words from God that we all are called to obey. Now, we've all heard the saying that behind every great man there is a great woman. And in the case of King Lemuel, he and the people that he ruled over were greatly blessed to have this lady as his mother. We know the name of the king. We do not know her name, only that she was his mother. And what does she tell him? First of all, you look at verse 2. This is a very common thing that mothers might tell their children, right? What are you doing? And she says it 3 times. Might have added some other choice words as well, but we definitely get the drift. Verse 3, don't give your strength to women. We see here that his mother rebukes him for being unwise, or if not necessarily rebuking him, she's very strongly saying, don't ever do this. So she's calling him to not be unwise in his choice of female companionship. Now you might read this and say, what, is she anti-woman? Don't give your strength to women? Well, of course, she was a woman herself. So what she's really getting at here is Lemuel, don't get with a woman who is going to turn you away from doing God's will. And as it says here, don't give your strength to those who destroy kings. Now, a king back in that day, and even some kings in modern day, part of the way that they enjoyed their position was that they gathered many women to themselves. And many of these women were wicked women and willingly entered the realm of the king so they could get power for themselves. And here the counsel of his mother is, you be very careful, Lemuel, for this morning I'm going to say, for the woman that you choose, that you are going to be with. It's so important that you remember the will of God for your life, and that you choose a woman who is going to not turn you away from doing the will of God. But it's more than that. We see here, because what she is concerned about here specifically for Lemuel as the king is not just that he'll do the will of God, but that he will render justice as he is called to do in his role. So we see here she goes on, and this specifically points to that. Verse 4 specifically points to that. Excuse me. She says, it's not for kings, O Lemuel. It's not for kings to drink wine, or for rulers to take strong drink. Why? Verse 5. Lest they drink and forget what has been decreed, and pervert the rights of all the afflicted. Now, did Jesus drink wine? Yes, he did. A certain type of wine, very watered down, because there was nothing else safe to drink, really. And so what is the mother saying here? She's saying, just drink water even though it's not safe. I believe what she's saying here is you have to be very careful of the type of wine that you are drinking and how much you are drinking, because if you let something, whether it's wine or drugs or whatever else it is in life, distract you and take away your ability to do what you are supposed to do and help people like you're supposed to, then you have failed. And to speak very practically, alcohol is something that, very common in our culture and around the world. And people think you might be weird if you decide and you tell people, I'm sorry, I don't drink. And in our culture today, it's very common to drink socially. With my job, I'll go to certain events and there is drinking all over the place. And one of the things I've noticed is typically when that happens, the person, after they start drinking, they no longer become quite the person they normally are. They start to become controlled by that substance to one degree or another. And the question is, do you really want to be controlled by something else besides yourself? And when you decide to become controlled by some other substance, you then cannot rein in your own actions and your impulses, and you do stupid things. Not only do you do stupid things, you do things that hurt others. And what is happening here in this passage is the mother says to King Lemuel, she says, if you decide to go down this path, then you are going to fail people who need you the most. You think of all the people who have gotten drunk and gone out in the highway, and they have killed themselves, and they have killed other people who were not drunk, just going about their day. Drunkenness kills people in more ways than one. And she says here, avoid that, Lemuel. But she says here in verses 6 and following, she says, all right, but if you want to give drink to someone, give it to one who is perishing. Wine to those who are in bitter distress. Let them drink and forget their poverty, remember their misery no more. Which I think she's kind of speaking a little bit facetiously, perhaps. Obviously, if you're in the hospital and you are in horrible pain, you're probably going to be given some sort of drugs to help with the pain. That happened to me when I was in surgery years ago. I didn't really want to take it, but the doctor said, here, take this. And so I had to take some stronger drugs because the doctor gave them to me directly. But that is different than just going about life, saying, you know what, I had a hard day. I think I need to drink some wine. I think I need to just completely let something else control me. That's not wise. So she's saying, don't mess yourself up by going down this path. If someone's going to mess themselves up, let it be someone else who does not have the responsibilities that you have. She goes on and says in verse 8, open your mouth for the mute, for the rights of all who are destitute. Open your mouth, judge righteously, defend the rights of the poor and needy. So what is this mother concerned with? She wants her son to be a man of justice, a man who is observant, and a man who then acts upon what he sees in his kingdom, in his culture. So his mother holds him to a high standard because of his responsibility to provide justice to those who are under his rule. Now, last time I checked, there are no kings or queens, at least in the normal definition, among us today. But even though there are no kings or queens or princes or princesses or dukes or duchesses, anything like that, we all have a certain measure of responsibility and influence over others, don't we? We all have the responsibility to make sure that life around us and people around us are treated right. We all have a degree of that, some of us more than others. And whenever we decide to engage in unwise behavior, like drinking, for example, that compromises our ability to make sure that people in our circle of influence are being treated unjustly, then we are not only harming ourselves, we're harming the people that God has given us responsibility over. Is that really something that you want to do? Often people who give themselves over to things like this, they're only thinking about themselves. That's the only thing in their mind is, oh, me, 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 me. I'm going to do this because this is what I want. This is how I feel. It's all up to me. But that's not the way it is in reality. There are other people in your life. People that need you to be a blessing to them. And if you decide to be focused just on yourself and things that will impair your judgment, mess with your mind, then not only are you messing yourself up, you are harming other people as well. And since this is Mother's Day, this passage is a challenge to all the ladies here who have the opportunity and the responsibility to train others. Remember that your willingness to speak the truth may very well have an impact on many more people than you could ever imagine. This mother, all she did was impact this one person, her son, and then how many people would her son have the responsibility and the ability to impact? Thousands, right? So if you feel like you are not very influential, you feel like, oh, you're not very important, what you say doesn't really matter, according to the Bible, that is not true. You have the opportunity, you have the ability to make a huge difference in thousands of people's lives potentially in the future by you ministering to just one child. So the godly woman works for justice. We next see the godly woman provides for her household. The godly woman provides for her household. If you look with me at the next few verses, verses 10 through 15. An excellent wife, who can find? She is far more precious than jewels. The heart of her husband trusts in her, and he will have no lack of gain. She does him good and not harm all the days of her life. She seeks wool and flax and works with willing hands. She is like the ships of the merchant. She brings her food from afar. She rises while it is yet night and provides food for her household and portions for her maidens. The godly woman provides for her household. Now, the author begins this section of the chapter with what you could call a rhetorical question. What is the question? Who can find an excellent wife? Who can find an excellent woman? Now, how is that rhetorical? It's rhetorical in that it is very difficult to find an excellent wife, an excellent woman. He continues by saying that she is the most valuable treasure that any man could find. Now, and I would understand that God also means aside from Christ, aside from the gospel. She is the most valuable treasure that a man could find. Based on what the author has just said, it's rare, again, to find such a woman. Very rare. And as you read through these verses, you say, "Oh yeah, I see what he's saying. It's pretty rare to find someone like this." So, what is this woman like? How does she provide for her household? Verse 11. The heart of her husband trusts in her, and he will have no lack of gain. We see here that her husband trusts her deeply. A godly woman is a trustworthy woman. A godly person is a trustworthy person. If you are not trustworthy, then you are not as godly as you should be. Someone should be able to look at you, someone should be able to hear you say something and think, this person just said this, Zoe just said this, so you know what? Zoe is going to do it because Zoe is trustworthy. All right, that is part of what it means to be godly. The heart of her husband trusts in her, and he will have no lack of gain. So the husband does well. How does the husband do well? Because his wife is managing things so well that he can't help but prosper because of how trustworthy and skillful she is. We see here that she manages the family affairs in such a way that her husband prospers. He doesn't feel the need to micromanage her. All right, how many of us know what it's like to be micromanaged? And some of us might know what it's like to micromanage others. Some of us might micromanage others and give them every little detail and tell them, no, you have to do it this way, and just this long to do it, and this and that, because they don't know what they're doing at all. But at some point, when someone learns, a wise person will learn and then is able to do it and even excel and grow on their own. So the husband does not have to micromanage her really in any way because of how capable and trustworthy she is. She manages the family resources with complete wisdom. Verse 12, she does him good and not harm all the days of her life. We see here that she is consistent in bringing good to her husband. It's not just like, I did something good for you last month. You're good for another couple months, right? Before I help you out again. All right, that is not what a godly woman or godly person is like. We are people who consistently provide benefit and good to others, and specifically a wife consistently provides good to her husband. She never does him any wrong. She never thinks, I'm going to kind of stick this little knife in his side by doing this way instead of the way he wants me to do it. We also see that she takes initiative and is a self-starter. Those of you who have applied for jobs before, you've probably heard of a self-starter as something that companies want. A self-starter is someone who can be given a task and they don't have to have management come by and say, come on, how you doing? Are you getting it done? How much progress have you made? You haven't made any progress, huh? All right, well, let's sit down, let's figure out, let's get you going here. No, self-starter does not need any of that. A self-starter says, what's my job? Bam, I'm working on it right now, I'm going to get it done. That is one mark of a godly woman and a godly person. She takes initiative and she provides clothing for her family, for her household. We see that in verse 13. And then she is extra diligent in how she provides food for her household. We see verse 14 and 15, she is like the ships of the merchant. She brings her food from afar. She rises while it is yet night and provides food for her household and portions for her maidens. What does she do? She is extra diligent in how she provides food for her household. She's willing to go long distances to provide for her family. She will cut her sleep short to make sure everyone has had enough to eat. Now, it's not necessarily that she will do the same thing every single day, that she cuts her sleep short every single day, but this is something that she will do, and she will do regularly, you could say, to make sure that her family is provided for. The godly woman provides for her household. Now, in our day and age, we can often measure ourselves against certain TV shows, right? TV show is designed to give you a picture of what life should be like ideally, right? If everything were perfect, this is the way it would be. You think of TV shows and personalities, maybe like Chip and Joanna Gaines, like, oh, they just take this horrible house and turn it into something beautiful every time, and then everyone loves it. At least that's what we see on the show. Or the cast of This Old House, if you've seen that one, how they beautify a house. Or your favorite celebrity chef. It's like, man, that's the way cooking needs to be right there all the time. Or, a shark on Shark Tank, where they always, get great deals, and people pitch them great ideas and this and that. So we can have extremely high standards about certain things, and we feel defeated when we can't measure up. And this passage is similar, right? If you are a woman today really looking at this passage and listening to this message today, you might be tempted to feel defeated. Why? Because it portrays a woman of boundless energy, of drive that never stops, and of conviction. And she probably doesn't have any food allergies, and she always has a smile on her face, and she can go on 5 hours of sleep every night. And this could be very discouraging to some here today who feel like you're just hanging on by your fingernails every single day and every hour of every day, and you feel like that you are only doing the minimum and barely getting by. And let me encourage you that there were likely times for the godly woman where this was the case with her. What we have here is a general snapshot of what the godly woman is like, but it doesn't mean that there are valleys between the mountain peaks of her life. So let me encourage you, keep doing the best that you can. God has given you certain resources, and He's withheld some from you. So keep trusting the Lord and be thankful that you can do what you're doing. Don't let your current struggles rob you of gratitude and contentment. Now, I'm sure there were seasons for this woman. Perhaps she also got sick, like some of us here today. We all go through seasons. Some of them are longer than others. But let me encourage you to take a few moments when you can and think about all that you are doing. Think, what is my day like? Think, what? Can I change anything? You say, no, I can't change anything. And there could be very little that you can change right now, and if that's the case, that's fine. God knows that. But maybe the Lord will reveal some things to you that you can change, grant you additional wisdom, or simply give you the strength to persevere until you are able to. God grants you that next blessing of being able to take a step forward like you have been wanting to take for a while. So be encouraged, even though this is a high standard that we're seeing here in this passage. The godly woman provides for her household. Next, we see here that the godly woman grows in her responsibilities. Look with me, if you would, at verses 16 through 20 now. She considers a field and buys it. With the fruit of her hand she plants a vineyard. She dresses herself with strength and makes her arms strong. She perceives that her merchandise is profitable. Her lamp does not go out at night. She puts her hands to the distaff, and her hands hold the spindle. She opens her hand to the poor and reaches out her hands to the needy. Here we have an additional side of the portrait of the godly woman. She is not just someone who maintains, she is someone who grows. She grows in her responsibilities. So what's the first thing we see here? She actually purchases land. She gets into real estate. And why does she do this? as an investment to better provide for her family. She's very focused on providing for her family. She's very other-centered. What else does she do? She increases her physical strength and her capacity for hard work. She is content, you could say, with her status in life, but she, in another sense, you might say, is not content to just do the bare minimum if she can perhaps do better. So she realized, you know what, if I can increase my capacity, then there is more of a blessing that I can be. So what does she do? She removes hindrances to being able to meet her goals. She recognizes the value in what she's doing, and she stays faithful in accomplishing it. Now, we can often joke about New Year's resolutions, right? And all the other things that we start, but we never finish. And I'm one of those people. It is easy to become enthusiastic about an idea, get all fired up, get started, but it's a whole nother different situation to see it through to the end. How many of us have started a book and never finished it? It'd be a very hard thing to do. So part of this is using wisdom to decide whether something is valuable enough to expend your time and energy on it, and to think that through before actually committing yourself. Because as a general rule in life, we should seek to finish what we start. That is what our goal should be, even though it often does not happen. So the excellent, godly woman remains diligent in what she purposes to do. All right, in this picture, there is no idea of, oh, she has great visions but doesn't follow through. No, the excellent woman is someone, the godly woman is someone who follows through. And part of following through is using wisdom before you actually take the plunge into a new venture. So in the midst of all that she is doing for her family, she has time and energy available to do what? To help those in need. We see that here in verse 20. She opens her hand to the poor and reaches out her hands to the needy. And that's an important point in life as well, because we want to, if we feel like we have an extra hour in the day, it's like, oh, how can I fill that? What can I do? What extra thing can I do that I want to do? And we should always, as much as possible, have a little bit of cushion in our lives, because there will be a need that will arise. Of course, a personal need will arise that we could never prepare for, but there are needs in other people's lives that always arise, and that we also need to be prepared to be a blessing to them through. So let me encourage you, as much as we want to max ourselves out, because that's kind of the culture that we're in, try to leave yourself a little bit of cushion so that you can be a blessing to others as well. So she is very concerned about being just and generous to those who have fallen on hard times. That is another mark of the godly woman. We also see here next that the godly woman makes her family prosper. I mean, it's just like building up. She just keeps impressing at every turn. She just keeps growing. It's like you think this is great. Well, let's turn the page. Wow, she's doing even more. The godly woman makes her family prosper. Look with me at verses 21 through 25. She is not afraid of snow for her household, for all her household are clothed in scarlet. She makes bed coverings for herself. Her clothing is fine linen and purple. Her husband is known in the gates when he sits among the elders of the land. She makes linen garments and sells them. She delivers sashes to the merchant. Strength and dignity are her clothing, and she laughs at the time to come. What we see here is a picture not just of someone who is maintaining, not someone who is just getting by, but someone who is actually prepared, who has been diligent, and has blessed her family in such a way that honestly, with these areas, the basic areas of life, they don't have to wonder, when am I going to get my next piece of clothing that I need? My clothes are getting pretty worn out. When am I going to get my next one? The godly wife, to the degree that she is able, she makes sure that her family is not only just taken care of at a basic level, but they are actually prospering. So she doesn't have to wonder whether her family will be okay when a challenging season arises, because she has prepared them over and above and beyond for any challenging season that might come, like the snow. She has planned for difficult times, and she is ready to meet them. And as you read this, you might think, wow, does the godly woman struggle with pride? Because it says here that she laughs at the time to come. It's like, oh, nothing's going to happen to us. And I very much doubt that's the case. But what that is saying is that she has prepared her family to the point where she doesn't have to worry about, making sure her family are prepared. She has done to the best that she can, and if something happens, it happens. But all things being equal, everything is going to be fine because of how diligent she has been. So she doesn't have to bite her fingernails and worry about whether her family is going to make it, because of how diligent she has been. She realizes that her own well-being is important to accomplishing her goals and serving her family. So this is a great point here. If you look again at verse 22, she makes bed coverings for her family. Well, of course she does that. But she makes bed coverings for herself. Her clothing is fine linen and purple. So what does she do? She also makes sure that she is appropriately attired and has what she needs, and so that she can be respectable as well. If she doesn't take care of herself, it doesn't reflect well on her husband or on her family, does it? I mean, imagine, for the family portrait, you've got the husband in an amazing suit, you've got all 5 children, or however many, are all, well-fed, great smiles, on their faces, and then you have the wife and mother there. Outfit was from the 90s, hair was from then as well, looking very tired. And you say, what's wrong with this picture? All right, it does not reflect well on the family, on the husband as well, if the wife looks really worn down. So it's important that the wife also does what she needs to take care of herself also. Scripture certainly warns ladies about putting too much emphasis on the external, right? That's very clear in Scripture. Let your adorning not be with all sorts of, gold and this and that, but let it be in the inward. And that's very true, but that does not minimize the importance of making sure that the godly woman is presentable. The godly woman is making sure that she is taking care of her own needs as well. The external is important. Not as important as being godly, but it still is important, and it should not be ignored. Sure, you might not have the hair or the clothes of your favorite celebrity, or even of the lady in the office next door, but you're able to present yourself in a way that isn't extravagant, but that makes you look attractive, makes you look confident, makes you look capable. I think that is what this passage is referring to here. Her capability, her diligence also increase her husband's ability to be the leader that God has called him to be. If you look with me at verse 23, her husband is known in the gates when he sits among the elders of the land. Now the husband is probably no slouch himself, right? He's probably not just some loser that she does everything for, all right? He probably is a man of character, and that might be partly why he is married to this godly woman, because he, and maybe if marriages were arranged, his parents arranged it, but he recognized the value in her as well, and he's taking responsibility for the family. But part of what she does makes him the respectable, well-known, wise man that he is. She supports him. She is the helper suitable for him, as we find in the book of Genesis. And he is known in the gates because of his wife's support of him. He is respected in large part because of her faithfulness in industry. Imagine if she just dropped the ball left and right. What would that mean? He'd then have to pick up this and that, and he wouldn't be able to be involved in the community and be a leader in the community, because he has to take care of this and that and the other thing, because she does not have the spiritual capability to, spiritual maturity, I should say, to be faithful in her role. Because she is faithful, he can excel in his role. We also see here that she runs a successful business and brings income to the family. Verse 24, she makes linen garments, and what does she do with them? She sells them. She delivers sashes to the merchant. So she has the capacity to be able to bring extra income to the family. She's pretty good at sewing, at least in this culture. That's a good thing to be good at. Now it might be good at finding sales, right? Because it's cheaper to buy clothes now than to make them, for sure. But she is able to contribute not just to the family's general well-being in providing clothes and this and that, but actually expand beyond that and to bring greater income to the family as well. And then we see here, because of her strength and dignity, she can look at the future and know that her family is prepared for what may come because of her faithfulness. Again, verse 25, strength and dignity are her clothing. She is a strong woman. She is a dignified woman. She's not, cowering around and, always, or just, proud and irritable or whatever. She is strong, but she is dignified. When people look at this woman, they see someone of character, someone who is caring, someone who is wise, someone who is attractive in her own way, and someone that is to be looked up to. So she is strong, she is dignified, and she laughs at the time to come because she has done her job well. The godly woman makes her family prosper. And then moving on to verses 26 to 29, we see here that the godly woman does all things well. This is kind of a summary, I feel like, of the chapter in a way. She does all things well. Look with me again at verses 26 and 20 through 29. She opens her mouth with wisdom, and the teaching of kindness is on her tongue. She looks well to the ways of her household and does not eat the bread of idleness. Her children rise up and call her blessed. Her husband also, and he praises her. Many women have done excellently, but you surpass them all. So, what again, if we had to summarize what the godly woman is like, what are some things that we would see here? Verse 26, she speaks with wisdom and kindness. We've all been around people that it seems like, thinking of one person right now, so don't read my mind, and there's no one here in this room. But it seems like everything this person says is complaining about this, about that, about how bad life is here, about how bad it is there. And that is not what the godly, and this person claims to be a believer, and that is not what the godly woman does. She speaks with wisdom, she speaks with kindness. She is not self-centered. And she will give good advice, and she will care about others. She will not, some people, you wonder if the way they said what they said was somehow to get at you. That is not what she does. She is going to be a transparent person. She is not going to try to, you don't have to wonder if she's playing politics and stabbing you in the back. She is wise, she is kind. Verse 27, she looks well to the ways of her household and does not eat the bread of idleness. We see that she pays attention. She is diligent in meeting the needs of her household. She is not lazy. She uses the energy that she's been given to do good, not to go out and do all sorts of unwise things. We see that her children and her husband can't help but tell others about how wonderful she is. Look at verse 28. Her children rise up and call her blessed, her husband also, and he praises her. Very praiseworthy lady here is the godly woman. Again, she doesn't do it for the praise. She does it because it's God's will for her life, and she loves God and she loves her family. But this is a type of woman that, and you often meet families like this, and they just can't stop but saying wonderful things about their mother because they know how much that she has done for them. I have that type of mother. And though there are many women who have done a great job, as we look at verse 29, many women have done excellently. Should we strive to be excellent? Absolutely. Is excellent the top of the totem pole, so to speak? Absolutely. You have good, you have better, you have excellent. All right? Excellent should be good enough. Guess what? The godly woman goes even above excellent. She has a 4.5 GPA. All right, she is beyond excellent, as it says, but you surpass them all. Though many women have done a great job, she outshines them. Sometimes in life, we are willing to settle for just being good enough and what our own standard of excellent is. We might be fine with mediocrity, even though we have the capacity to be better. We have the capacity for greater growth and excellence. And the godly woman, she leaves nothing on the table. She uses all the gifts that God has given her to the max. The godly woman does all things well. So it's easy to see that the woman described here is a very driven person. She will not stop until she has met her goals. She's not the type of person you'll just see kind of shuffling along the sidewalk, with her, just without a care in the world. Of course, that she is going to take time for relaxation and rest and do what she needs to do for her own self-care. But she is a very driven person. She's going to meet her goals. She is the perfect combination of two things, of personality and of perseverance. Often people can be easily placed into one of two categories as well. You have the people-oriented people, and you have the task-oriented people. Who is the godly woman? She, I would argue, is a great combination of both. So the task-oriented people may be tempted to accuse the people-oriented person of being lazy, right? And then the people-oriented person might want to accuse the task-oriented person of being uncaring. But the godly woman, she is able to take those two strengths and able to incorporate them into her life. She is super diligent, but she also cares about people and channels her love for people into edifying them in relationship as well as in providing for them. But what motivates this godly woman toward such excellence? This brings us to the core of this passage. This brings us to the main thing here. What is her motivation? Is it genetic? Is she afraid of failure, and that's why she does all that she does? Does she just have an amazing metabolism that doesn't let her sit still? Does she just want to be better than everyone else? That brings us to the main idea of this passage. The godly woman is motivated by her reverence for God. As the passage here says, by her fear of God. She cares so much about God. She has such a high view of God. She would never want to disappoint God. She would never want to disrespect God. And that is why she does what she does, because she recognizes all that God has done for her and who God is. The godly woman is motivated by her reverence for God. Look with me at verse 30. Charm is deceitful and beauty is vain, but a woman who fears the Lord is to be praised. Now, does this verse mean that a woman should not be charming? That the godly woman should not be charming in any way? Or that the godly woman should not be beautiful in any way? And I would say, no, that's not what this verse is saying. I believe what this verse is saying is that if you're just seeking charm, guess what? That's deceitful. If you're just seeking beauty, that's empty. That's fleeting. That's there one day and gone the next. But if you want to seek something that is substantial, that is 100% meaningful, that is the right thing to seek, then seek the fear of God. That is to be praised. So when you see a godly woman, yes, you might think, wow, she is a lovely lady. She has a great personality. She is charming. But those are not the main things to praise her for. She should be praised because she loves God. Amen. That is what she should be praised for. So we see here that she fears the Lord. That's her motivation. That's her claim to fame. And there may be some here today that are inspired by this or that quality of the godly woman, and you want to fixate on that. It's like, well, you know what? I need to work harder. Yes, I need to work harder. I need to be like this godly woman, and I need to start my own business. And yeah, there might be some things here. You say, you know what? Maybe I need to work harder at this and that. But if you need to choose something in this passage to fixate on, to park on, to say, you know what? This is what I need to work on. It is what you see in verse 30. Fearing God. If you fear God, then all these other things are going to flow from your fear of God. You are going to take care of others. You are going to be industrious. You are going to be wise. You are going to be faithful. Because that's all comes with fearing God. Putting God first means that you will then love your husband like you're supposed to be, or that you'll love your family like you were supposed to. That is the thing we should focus on. Again, she might be charming, she might be beautiful, but those don't matter nearly as much as her relationship to God. But the author doesn't end here. This would be a great place to end, right? But he doesn't end here. He proclaims that the godly woman will be rewarded. Look with me at verse 31. Give her the fruit of her hands, and let her works praise her in the gates. Now, there have been times when I've gone to a restaurant, I've probably told some of you this before, I've gone to a restaurant, I've ordered a meal that wasn't the cheapest meal on the menu, and it should have been delicious, and guess what? I came away disappointed. Anyone ever had that experience before? Absolutely. After that experience, a certain thought pops into my head. What would that thought be? If I had simply bought the ingredients myself and made this myself, it would have tasted a whole lot better and been a whole lot cheaper. Anyone have that thought after you went to the restaurant? Absolutely. While some might recognize some of these characteristics in ourselves or in the people that we know, we may be struggling to think of someone who has the whole package that the author is describing. Now, some of you might not be struggling. Say, oh, I know who a godly woman is. But if you're struggling with this, or if you are the woman and you're saying, man, this is such a high standard, let me encourage you, don't be discouraged. If you are a woman feeling overwhelmed by this passage, remember that every woman, every person, will experience growth and maturity. You are not the same person today that you were 10 years ago. And by that I mean today you are probably more mature and more godly than you were 10 years ago. So there is growth for everybody. It does not come overnight. So what God values, the mature, godly woman, he also values the woman and man who is humble enough, this is where it starts, humble enough to recognize shortcomings and dedicated to growth in godliness and maturity. It may take some days. It may take a little while. And though some days it may be hard to see growth, maybe you don't feel like you're taking a step back, or you feel like, you are taking a step back, don't get discouraged. Remember that you have Christ, that you have the Holy Spirit within you, that you can do all things through Christ who strengthens you. The godly woman is motivated by her reverence for God.